We have with us today Professor Vakratsas from McGill University. Demetrios has been working for those of you who's been in the company for a while. You saw him before presenting in our training programs in the LMC. He's been working with us now for a number of years in the area, especially of accountability and how communications works. We asked Demetrios to help us understand where things are going in terms of communications and his view on how all these changes that we've been talking about during these last years are open opportunities for brands to engage with their customer base. So thank you very much, Demetrios, and welcome.
Thank you, Hernan. It's nice to be back in this audience, which is quite familiar. So it's great seeing a lot of you again. No offense to those of you that I haven't seen before, but we'll get the chance probably to catch up after the presentation. Let me give you a little bit of a background here on the project. A few months ago, Hernan gave me a call, and he said, you know, lots of things are happening in the industry, obviously, lots of dynamics, especially on the media side. So maybe it's time to rethink about the whole model, how communications work. You know, the stuff that you did with Tim Ambler, and you know, you've done it for us again. Maybe we need to update this, right? And I'm going, why? It's just this stuff was working so well for me. You know, it was an overdrive. Didn't have to do anything. You know, it was practically a briefcase that was traveling all over the world, and I was presenting the stuff. But of course, when I hung up with Hernan, I said, yeah, we have to do something. Number one, because Hernan is always right. Number two is because a lot of things have changed and are changing. So what I'm going to present about here today, and I'm known to be as a simple man, I like simple ideas, very quick ideas. I don't know about simplicity today, but I'm going to present very few ideas about how we should be rethinking the whole model of how communications work, given the new environment. So the open systems title and term that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, I'm going to explain, is actually the reflection of the new environment, where communications are flatter, they're more open, they're more democratic, and opened up to consumers, and that has to force a rethink of how communications work today. So communications and open systems, that is the theme for today, and I'm quite sure that you are familiar with this guy, right? Who isn't? I mean, everybody loves him, especially women, I heard. And not only women like him, or consumers, lots of agencies, lots of brands like this campaign. They're crazy about this campaign. They're raving about this campaign. About a month ago, I was in a McKinsey presentation in Europe. That was their textbook case of new media environment, social media, or what we call here the new environment of talk, think, and trust media. This is how you do it. There was not a manual before, but now this maybe is the manual of how things can be done, should be done in the new open communications era. And we're going to discuss a little bit about that and why is it so popular, not just with consumers, but with clients and agencies as well. And before that, though, I'm going to play the video, which Hernan has deferred it to me, and I know that's a big sacrifice for him because he likes the campaign.
Old Spice practically invented body wash for men. But as the category has grown, the competition has heated up. With business slowing, Old Spice body wash was in need of a boost. With women making more than half of all body wash purchases, we decided to target men and their ladies for the very first time. How could we get couples to have a conversation about body wash? How could we get women to stop buying lady-scented products for their guys and choose Old Spice instead?
Hello, ladies. Look at your man. Now back to me. Now back at your man. Now back to me. Sadly, he isn't me. But if he stopped using lady-scented body wash and switched to Old Spice, he could smell like he's me. Look down. Back up. Where are you? You're on a boat with the man your man could smell like. What's in your hand? Back at me. I have it. It's an oyster with 2 tickets to that thing you love. Look again. The tickets are now diamond. Anything is possible when your man smells like Old Spice and not a lady. I'm on a horse.
Launched online Super Bowl weekend and on television shortly thereafter, the man your man could smell like quickly became a phenomenon. Buzz was fueled with the media buy in targeted environments where couples would be watching together. In the first 3 months of 2010, the brand captured 75% of all conversations in the category, with over half of this buzz generated by women. Suddenly, everyone was talking about the man your man could smell like.
Yeah! Hello, ladies. I'm Karan Butler. Look at your man. Now back at me.
Now back to your boy. Now back to me. Sadly, he's not as cute as me.
But if he stopped using lady-scented body wash,
Start use curry powder, he can smell just like me.
Look down, back up. Where are you? You're on a boat.
With the boy your man could smell like.
What's in your hand? Now back at me.
It's an oyster. Open up. It's 2 tickets to that thing you love.
Look again. The laptop is now a celestial sandwich here in the snack zone.
Anything is possible when your sausage tastes like a sausage that's spicy and not a lady.
I'm on a horse.
Old Spice? I tell you, I love that commercial so much, I'm about to buy me some Old Spice.
Every man in the world wants to smell like our next guest. There are very few commercials that are that special that people really pay attention to.
On the heels of this overwhelming success, an encore performance was a no-brainer. But Old Spice wanted something more engaging. How could the man your man could smell like have a conversation with his fans on a more intimate, personal level?
You tell me.
And so the response campaign was born. In 2.5 days, a Wieden & Kennedy team of creatives, digital strategists, developers, and producers filmed 186 video responses to fans and celebrities, culled from questions on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and more. These real-time messages were then posted on YouTube, sparking a sensation that would become the fastest-growing and most popular interactive campaign in history.
On YouTube, 12755JDH commented, "I love these commercials. And I love you. Monaco Smile! And I've renamed my kingdom Elenopia. Presidential Ab Point. Please excuse me, I have another call. Oh, hello, dangerous prairie wolf. This voicemail is now diamonds."
On day one, the campaign received 5.9 million YouTube views, more than Obama's victory speech after 24 hours. On day two, Old Spice had 8 out of the top 11 most popular videos on the web. By day 3, the campaign eclipsed 20 million views. And 1 week post-launch, the work has been seen more than 40 million times. During this time, the brand's Twitter following increased 2,700%. Facebook fan interaction went up 800%. Traffic to oldspice.com increased 300%, and Old Spice became the #1 all-time most viewed branded channel on YouTube. And in the 6 months since the man your man could smell like first appeared, the campaign has generated more than 1.4 billion impressions for the brand, and that's a lot. Without question, the campaign has had a dramatic impact on the bottom line. In the 6 months since launch, sales of Old Spice body wash has increased 27% from a year ago. In the last 3 months, sales are up 55%. And in the past month, sales are up 107%, cementing Old Spice as the #1 brand of body wash for men.
All right, so there's your dream campaign, or the dream campaign of clients and agencies. Why do you think that, beyond the numbers obviously, which are very self-explanatory, why do you think this campaign has captured the imagination, the attention, not the consumers, of brands and agencies? Why do you think is that? Why is it so attractive? Any thoughts? The faster we answer, the faster we go to lunch.
It's because it's got a guy with a naked chest.
All right, okay.
It's just really simple, creative idea, isn't it?
Very simple idea, and simple ideas are the best. What else?
Product is the key.
Huh?
Product is the key. Product is in the center of everything.
Product?
Yes.
Okay, all right, but it's not just about the product nowadays. Yeah, back there. All right, so there's a free component to it. There's the free media, or the trust media, as we call it. Yeah?
It's effectively changing the way consumers are purchasing this product.
Okay.
It's actually
But it can follow these changes. It can track these changes very well, right? What else? Any other thoughts here? Yeah. Want a lot of awards, so you know it's a follower business to a certain extent. So you want to do what other successful people have done. Yeah. Everybody's talking about it. High reach, high visibility. Well, it's been a year since the Twitter campaign is still around. You know, good results. Yeah.
So I had very good insight to be done this about men washing with women products.
Okay, all right, so you're not going directly to the target market. You actually let the target market come to you by targeting to a relevant market. But in terms of, yeah?
It makes you feel without being noticed, so you can still make TV ads.
Very good point, excellent point, because I was thinking about the same thing, right? I mean, you know, one thing obviously is the textbook use of talk, think, and trust media. They're all in play. And they're well mixed, and they're going back and forth. You know, what Professor Sturman would have called a dynamic loop, or a closed loop. You know, you start with a TV campaign and the Super Bowl, biggest event of the year in the US, then it becomes viral, trust media and so forth, then it becomes a little bit more of a think campaign with the Twitter, then becomes viral again, then you continue with the TV campaign, which is a control campaign, but of course then you have to top it over. I don't know whether they're going to do that, but it's a very effective use of mix. Number one. Number two, as the point was made there, is it doesn't fundamentally disrupt the old model and the old mechanics. What's the old school model? That I will start with a TV commercial. The TV commercial is going to become a template, and then it's going to drive everything else. Because that hopefully is going to drive the cost down, and it's going to create synergies and high reach, high exposure, and things like that. This is still happening here. Okay, you got old school TV commercial being the template, the centerpiece of the campaign. You can still dictate certain things because, you know, we're going to talk about dictatorship and democracy today, all right? And it's not a form of government lesson there, although we are at Columbia University. And although you still dictate certain things, you let customers in as well. Engagement. So there's two key issues there, two key concepts, control and engagement. That campaign was able to engage the customer to a high level without losing the control. And control is a major key for clients, for brands, and for agencies. I said that before, like about 2007, in this forum, different place though, in Miami, and I said, you know, like the new media environment, you know, the most important thing, the most critical thing there is control. Are we going to relinquish the control to the consumer? Are we going to relinquish the control to the customer? What's going to happen? There's a lot of uncertainty. We have to deal with this uncertainty, and we're still thinking, I think, on the supply side of the business, as brands and agencies, that there is a trade-off between engagement and control. That if we give the control to the customer, if we're going to engage the customer, we're going to lose control. Well, one of the points of this campaign is that you don't have to do that. There's no necessarily a trade-off between control and engagement. And let me give you a couple of other very, very simple examples that I'm sure you're familiar with, that I think they drive the point home. One is the well-known Gap logo example, right? It came up, the case came up, I think last fall, where unilaterally, without losing control, in other words, Gap moved from this logo on the right-hand side to the new logo, and there was a backlash in the social media by consumers, right? So the idea there was pretty much, the headline was, how dare you? How do you do this? How can you do this without asking us? We've got a stake in this brand. This brand has a certain meaning, which must have come as a shock to the Gap people, right? A pleasant shock that actually some people care about their brand, right? But it was the reality. And the reality was that in an effort not to lose the control, do things your own way, you lost the customer because you didn't engage the customer, and now there is a backlash. So there's two lessons here. Number one, brands have meaning for the consumer. And that meaning is sourced from the consumer. It's what this logo stands in the consumer's mind, not in the brand's mind. And number two, as a result, consumers are stakeholders in the brand. And they're much more today because they can express this meaning through the social media. And that cannot be ignored anymore. Now, all that said, in fact, that's not a very negative case. Because you figure out, number one, that some people care about you, okay? And number two, in the long run, that may help you. Because one of the other points I want to make today is that negative feedback, which exists out there, and there's plenty of it, not as much as we think, but there's plenty of it, negative word of mouth, can be more constructive in the long term than positive word of mouth. Because it gives you some ideas. It tells you what you did wrong and what they didn't like about you. When we get positive feedback, we get a pat on the back. Great, you did great, but you don't know why you did great, right? Usually when people tell you you suck, they want to back that up. And they're going to tell you a couple of ideas, which in the long run, they may help you. Okay? Second example, it's an offline example, but I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it. It was the whole Tropicana fiasco. All right? The packaging, the original packaging was on the left-hand side with the orange and sort of like a signature packaging. Again, a very status kind of packaging. It's been around for a long time. And then Pepsi and Tropicana and their agency, they decided to change the logo. And I think it was the same agency that changed the Pepsi logo. And there's a whole bunch of stories behind that Pepsi logo change as well, right? And the backlash, the marketplace backlash was huge. Tropicana, for the first time in I don't know how many years, they relinquished the top spot in the oranges market to none other than Coca-Cola and Minute Maid. And they never got it back because of that. And the message is, this looks like what? This package on the right-hand side. Huh? What does it remind you of? Huh? Any other connotations?
White label.
Private label. It looks like a private label. So the message there is, if we want a private label, we're going to get it for ourselves. We don't want you to be a private label. We want you to be a brand. And again, in the long term, that's good news. Because it's not just the customer that is relevant. The brand is relevant as well. Because customers care about brands because brands have meaning for them. Okay? What's that meaning? It's big, that's a huge question. It's $1 million question. But we can find that out more or better now with opened up communications. So the story here is that brands are meaningful. Okay, and we like that. The meaning is with the customers, whatever the experience of the customer is with the brand, and that makes the customer basically a stakeholder of the brand, a shaper of the brand. So it's about sharing the value of the brand, brands, and customers. Any questions here on the two cases? Pretty clear, pretty obvious, but you know, again, the feedback here is the hard way. Okay, so you find out after you lose your market share. You could have done it much, much earlier. So, observation, lesson number one, okay? No engagement, no control. If you think that you're not going to engage the customer in order not to lose control because it's not convenient, it's too uncertain, it's too risky and so forth, it's not going to work. The two cases have taught us that there's only one way to retain or regain control of the situation, engage the customer. Because then you have a chance to work with them. Co-creation is another theme that I'm going to spray around in this presentation. Okay, so the only way to have control, either regain, retain, or get the control, is actually to engage the customer. All right, so how do we get to this point? Well, I'm sure you've seen similar slides to this This is a survey of media planners, which basically reflects plans of clients. And what you see there at the top is dominated. More than 50% use online media, and of course, social networking as well. So now you see that, if there is any long tail, is on the talk media and the mass media, not in the new media. So communications have flattened out. They've opened up in two ways, both on the supply and the demand side. Supply side, how? Well, this is more efficient, right? So that's going to bring in the smaller players, the smaller brands into the communication picture. So there are more advertisers out there now, number one. So more voices on the supply side. But number two, there are more customers as well, because you bring in the customers in the conversations of social networks. So you have a plurality, what I call voices out there, both on the supply side and the demand side. How do we get to this situation? Well, as I said before, one reason could be, and it is for sure, efficiency. Okay, online media, social networks supposedly are more currency efficient, but the other reason, another favorite theme of Hernan's is trust. Okay, because when we're talking about networks and word of mouth, we're talking about the most trustworthy media out there. And trust is a big thing today, again, because the communications are open and because people can exchange ideas and can feedback on each other. And that's what they're going to trust rather than the other media. Okay, so communications have opened up. Trust has become a big factor. Switch completely. Movement to something that is much more open. And this is where the concept of democracy comes in. And I know, people have beat up on this concept. It's become sort of like a tired cliche. We talk about democracy of choice and democracy of voices and things like that. But I'm going to try to convince you actually that this is a very substantial distinction. This is not semantic. This is not a beat up cliche. It is about real democracy, because if you think about it, in free markets we have free exchange of goods and information as well. That free exchange of information did not exist in the communications world. We have just now become an open market, a free market, as far as the information exchange is concerned. Let me give you a couple of quick and very simple examples. In the old days, you want to buy a bottle of wine, you want to buy a pair of running shoes, which are two products that I'm personally interested in, and you want to know a little bit more about it, where would you go? Store? What else?
Magazines.
Magazines, specialized magazines maybe, in that particular case, Wine Spectator, Runner's World. What else?
Friends.
Friends, critics. Okay, but your friends have the same access to the other information that you have at this point. So, in other words, you would go to the gatekeepers. All right, the salesperson, the journalist, the critic, the specialized publication. That's not democracy. Okay, that's dictatorship. This is like sham elections. All right, we're going to have some fake dictatorship elections, and we're going to get about 97 to 98% of the vote, okay, just to make it real, and we're going to give you 2 or 3% of the vote as well. So you can throw in a question here and there, but pretty much we're going to control the flow of information. So this is like a, I don't know, a Videla-like election. Did Videla hold any fake election? Not even fake? Oh, man.
Pinochet.
Huh? Pinochet. Okay, so it's like a Pinochet kind of election. 98% is going to come from us, and you can throw in your 2%, but that's going to be ignored anyway. All right? No more. That information cannot be ignored. Why? Because the access to the information is cheap. And the information itself, to get it, the information content, is cheap as well. So you have this plurality of voices now, you have this democracy, and it's kind of ironic, again, because back in 2007, I talked about how for the last 100 years, 150 years now, we'll be saying the customer is the king, the customer is the king. But really, we didn't mean it, right? I mean, we were the king. We were in control. Okay, but now all of a sudden, with the new environment, the customers become the king. So it went from one extreme to the other. From the brand monarchy for dictatorship to the customer monarchy or dictatorship. It's not about dictatorship or monarchy. It's about democracy. Both are equal partners, brands and customers and consumers, because brands are still relevant to consumers. There are certain things that consumers cannot do and they ask brands to do for them. Okay? So democracy, plurality, openness of communications, and then I talked about a flatter communications field. I don't know if you're familiar with this company here, HubSpot, which they claim that they invented the term inbound marketing. I don't know if you've heard about that term as well, which pretty much the philosophy is there's a completely reversal flow in the media. Okay? We don't find the customer. The customer comes and finds us. How? By managing the content on the web of my client and managing the blogs and updating the blogs, making sure that the crawlers and the spiders pick it up, the aggregators pick it up, and eventually the customer comes to you. Obviously, very, very appealing business model for small to medium businesses. And that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly who they're targeting. But by doing so, using the open communications, using the open media, they actually open up the field even more for more advertisers to come in. So openness, flatness of communications, these are the sign of the times here. So if you want to put it in sort of like a picture perspective, we've got more democracy, we've got more voices out here, plurality, openness, flatness. That's going to create brand ecosystems, and I stole one from a blog which is in the background. That's a brand ecosystem that are very much centered on the customer. The customer is a central piece of that brand ecosystem, who eventually becomes the stakeholder for the brand. Just like in the case of Gap, in a very rudimentary fashion. Okay, the customer comes in and claims a stake in the brand. So this is the current state of affairs, and I think there will be very little disagreement that this is what's going on, that we are facing a system where the customer is a centerpiece, what I call customer-centric, or what a lot of people call customer-centric systems, and where communications are pretty much open and pretty much flat, and everything is a game, and everybody is a game in this game. Okay? Questions? All right. So my question now is, going back to Hernan's original question, is where do we go from here, or how does this change our thinking about how communications work? Can we inject some new thinking into how communications work? And of course, in order to do that, you've got to go to the original article, the genuine article, right? Which is my model with my well-traveled model with Tim Ambler on how communications and advertising works. And that's about a decade old, so that's going to give you an idea that, yeah, we really need a touch-up here. VNA doesn't stand for Victoria and Albert. It stands for Vakratsas and Ambler. And the idea there is very, very, very simple, okay? Well, here comes the part where I have to ditch my model, okay? But it's kind of restrictive in some sense. So the idea is, and it's a very, I have to say, it's a very 90s idea, or at least end of 90s idea, is we cook up a campaign, strategy, creatives, media planning, all right, and then we sort of channel that to the consumer. Of course, we have to make it catchy to get the attention, and then we have to deliver 3 effects. That's our task there. We have to deliver 3 types of effects. First is what we call the rational effect. We've got to give them some information what the product is all about. And we're good at doing this because we made the product, right? And hopefully that's a good product. And then the other 2 are a bit more dodgy nowadays, because we also have to give them some ideas with disruption, cool campaigns, award-winning campaigns, and so forth, how consumers are supposed to feel about our brand, and how consumers are supposed to use our brand. What are the ideal consumption situations of our consumers? And that's where the model kind of like starts to break down, okay, on those two dimensions, because this pretty much, as I'm going to make the point later on, these depend on the customer. These are customer sourced. These are crowdsourced. How customers feel and how customers experience your product, forget it. It's up to them. You're not going to tell them, okay, what they have to do or how to use the product. Let me give you a very simple example. Let me ask you a very simple question. You may know the answer. It's fascinating, though. How do people use screwdrivers? Screwdrivers, and I'm not talking about the drink, I'm talking about, unfortunately, the real screwdriver. One, of course, use is they screw, they tighten the screw, or untighten the screw. What else? A lot of people do with a screwdriver.
Open cans.
They open up cans of paints. These are huge and a pain to open for a lot of us, okay? And that is a piece of information that you had no intention, or that's a piece of use that you had no intention as a brand to do it, right? You don't design a screwdriver to open up paint cans. But eventually, that's what you do, because a lot of people use them and you have to make them sturdy, okay? You have to make sure that, you know, your screwdriver is not going to break when they try to open up that can of paint, because then that's going to be embarrassing, right? But this is not something that's coming from you. It's coming back the other way. And in this particular case, brands figure that out from observation and observational research. Something like, let's say, IDEO does out in California, right? They have a whole model about this. But the idea here is that you can observe people now on the internet. You can observe people in social media. So you can find a lot of nuggets of information about how people use your product from the conversations. So these are two of the features that are going to have to emerge from the consumer. You cannot just give the consumers an idea of how they should feel and how they should use the brand. That's going to have to come from them. And that's where the stakeholding thing comes in. And that's where the model, I have to admit, painfully, breaks down a little bit. Okay? And it's not that it's not relevant today, but it's more relevant for talk media. And the disturbing thing here is not that it's one-way traffic. In fact, there is a feedback loop. Okay? The most alarming thing is that everything is coming down from the brand. It's dictated from the brand. The brand has the initiative. And you know, no wonder why agencies and brands love this model, because it shows them having the control. But that's not necessarily the case. So where we have to relax our thinking about how communications work is we have to bring in this sourcing from the customer. The customer has become a partner. Okay? There's not just two-way traffic. The customer has the initiative. And in particular, those two dimensions. Okay? Now, just to give me a little pat on the back here, I have to say, though, that we did say, and we did point out, we've always been pointing out when we presented the model, that experience is the big factor there. Whether people are happy with your brand, advertising can work. If they're not happy, advertising actually can have an adverse effect. So we did foresee that customer experience is going to play a big role. Okay? But how you define emotions as experience today, it's a whole different thing, because it has to come from the customer. Even if you show, as you saw the commercials from OnStar, situations where people, you know, their lives have been saved by using the product, you do testimonials and things like that, still, you have the control. It's your choice which testimonials to pick, right? Well, not anymore in the trust media, because in the trust media, consumers can pick whatever testimonials they want, and they're going to put it out there. And you have to deal with this. You have to live with this, and it's a big business now how you deal with negative feedback, right? Online. But as you're going to see, United breaks guitars and things like that. But as we're going to see, actually, surprisingly, there's not as much negative feedback out there in online reviews. And I'm going to need your help. I'm going to need your input as to why this thing happens. We don't have a lot of negative feedback. Okay?